how's it going, everybody? We welcome you to episode 101. That's right, it's White Football Now 101. Classes in session, if you will. Jordan Helly, Hunter Hughes back with you. Today is Tuesday, August 1st. We are officially in the new month. We are officially in the game month. Hunter, by the time we release this, as usual, on Thursday, August 3rd, it will be 23 days from Vanderbilt at the time of publication. Big shout out, first of all, to our sponsors, Spectrum Mobile and HawaiiUSA Federal Credit Union. And for our opening drive, just wanted to give a big shout out as well to everybody for showing a lot of love. The Changs included, Coach Timmy Sherry, one coming on the pod last week, and then, hitting the big milestone 100. I think we got the most comments we've ever gotten, like 25 on our YouTube posting last week. So shout out. We'll kind of get to those in the coming weeks for those that had questions and give you guys a little love there as well. But the calendar has turned, Hunter. We move into the next 100, perhaps, here with episode 101. Much appreciative to everybody out there, and also much appreciative of the fact that, hey, it is 3.5 weeks away, basically, from Hawaii taking the field for the new season.
It is, it's upon us, Jordan. We're deep in fall camp right now. The guys are out there hitting each other, getting into some scraps over the weekend. I heard about me too, man. My other co-host, Josh Pacheco, on Off the Bench in the afternoons, is like, is this concerning? And I just want to be like, we love it, man. This is what this is all about. And they're usually fighting with helmets on and shoulder pad. Everybody's fine. It's more just guys hitting each other. We need more of it in life. Sorry. I feel like we need football for that very reason. And we're less than 4 weeks out from actually getting to hit people and it being within the confines of the rules of the game. So that's going to be really fun. And excited to see kind of just how everything unfolds here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, it's probably a little overly simplistic. It's probably a little barbaric, and maybe somewhat hyper masculine, but it would be concerning if there weren't fights at practice. Like they would be more concerning if there wasn't a little bit of, animosity at practice. Like these dudes have been hitting each other for a while now, going through things. Football requires a certain level of aggression, right? Like that's just the nature of the game, the physicality of the game, and you don't want this to persist throughout the season or anything like that. But when you get to this point of the calendar and it's like, hey man, we're close, we're really close to getting in there. Like you need a little bit of fight, literally and figuratively. I'm not saying like it should be an all-out brawl or anything like that, but there should be a little bit of gusto to it. Like you need that a little bit during camp. You need guys to get fired up. You need guys to get motivated. And I'm not saying cheap shots or anything like that, but a few dust ups, like that's okay. That's okay. I think it's part of the process. No matter kind of what level you get to in football, like that's sort of how it goes,
And if you're at this point of the fall camp process, people are competing for jobs. So you're playing as hard as you can play. You're going 100%. And especially guys in the trenches, man, offensive, defensive line, they play a totally different game than you and I ever did, Jordan, playing quarterback. It was a bad day if we ever get nudged or slapped, on the back with full equipment on. That they're getting pushed, tugged, pulled, stomped on their feet, someone leaning on their knee. It's already just a physically uncomfortable thing to be in the trenches. And then let alone if someone says something, I mean, I'd struggle not to swing, that's just part of the deal. Obviously you want a family culture to be cultivated and created in all of this. And I think that's something that Timmy is attempting to kind of navigate and balance through all of this. But that's just kind of what comes of a Division I football environment.
Yeah, it's it's part of the building process for the season. And we will get into a bit more of some of the observations, excuse me, from camp here in just a second. But we'll want to take this chance to remind you all that Hawaii Football Now is brought to you by HawaiiUSA Federal Credit Union. As Hawaii's largest credit union, they are committed to serving individuals and businesses through its 14 branch locations statewide and convenient digital banking services as well. As a leader in providing support for the islands, HawaiiUSA is committed to strengthening Hawaii's financial wellness and sharing successes with members, local businesses, and the greater community. Visit HawaiiUSAFCU.com. All right, rolling on here with episode 101. Also want to give a big thanks to our guy Jonathan on the controls for this episode as well. All right, let's get into it. Some news and notes from basically the first week of camp. This week will be the first full week. Kind of interesting how they're formatting Camp Hunter. Last year under Coach Chang, they took the approach, kind of borrowed it from COVID times in terms of multiple waves, right? They were holding multiple sessions of practice, kind of splitting the squad up, if you will. They're not doing that this year, but taking a more maybe deliberate approach in terms of how they're scheduling out practices, treating each week sort of like game week, where they ramp up heavier contact days, walkthrough days, Saturdays being sort of game day, if you will, where they'll have heavy contact and things like that. We saw a bit of that with the scrimmage this past Saturday at Ching. And so what have you made of at least that approach so far in terms of sort of getting these guys calibrated, if you will, while also making sure that they're ready to go come August 26th?
Yeah. Early last week, like on Wednesday, the first practice was long. It was almost 3 hours long, Jordan. Can't do that every day. So they're obviously going to need to kind of pull back on the output from these guys. And it's kind of a give and take situation, because the only way that you will get the guys prepared up front with blocking, the only way that you'll get running backs ready for game one with their cuts, or our wide receivers and the QBs working the run and shoot concepts at full speed, is in full speed what they call team environments, where it's live action. So they're trying to best I guess you'd say pepper that in through the practices. But it seems very lighthearted whenever I'm down there. It doesn't seem like they're doing a ton of team just yet. I wasn't able to be at the scrimmage this past Saturday, but I know that was a big emphasis of being down at TC Ching Athletic Complex instead of over on the grass field, which they have been the remainder of the time. So I think they're gonna. My guess is they're gonna start to maybe turn that up a little bit too. Do some more team environments to get their starters in place. I've seen a handful of different receivers being used with the ones, so I think they're still kind of ironing out their starting 11 on both sides of the football. And that's what this part of camp is for. They won't really be looking at Vandy for at least another week and a half. So it's really just about us at this point of the process.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to see, how they're going about it. And I think, they've thought this through, obviously. There's a lot of science behind it, the way that they're going through. And so I guess in your observation, how have the guys kind of respond? It's pretty early, right? I mean, last week wasn't even necessarily a full week. We got a chance to talk to Coach Chang right before they hit the field, basically to start practices. But how do you think the guys are responding, or how do you think they will respond to sort of this sequential plan that's been laid out over the next few weeks?
Yeah, I look at that camp schedule, and it just it seems like, well, nothing's really going to be surprising unless they do some sort of they always do it at camp. People come ready for practice, they do a few periods, and then Rolo used to blow the whistle and yell to the pool, and then we would all run to the pool. And so outside of something like that, this sequential kind of camp structure bodes itself well for injury prevention, honestly, Jordan, because it doesn't seem like it's too heavy. Gone are the days of 2-a-days. Gone are the days of 3-a-days. It's you've got compliance and NCAA breathing down your neck to prevent that stuff from ever happening. So it's a very kind of, yes, it's difficult in some aspects, but in a lot of ways, it's like, hey, that ain't too bad, man. They're kind of cruising, but yeah, kind of spaced out. You can get your work done and keep the legs as fresh as possible for when we go to Vandy in just a few weeks.
Yeah, not far off, that's for sure. Speaking of staying healthy bodies, unfortunately, it was reported a couple of weeks ago, Derek Boyd, the second running back, out for the season with a knee injury. Landon Sims moving from tight end to running back, in part to help boost up a little bit of that running back depth as well. Tight end been a big topic of conversation. I think amongst fans, how that's going to look. Guys like Grayson Morgan, Devin Tawa-Efa, as well in that mix. What have you, beyond sort of the plan going forward? What are some of the things that have maybe stood out to you, Hunter, in the times that you've been able to check out practice here so far?
Yeah, it's difficult to not be overly or hypercritical, Jordan, just yet of our passing attack. I can't help but look and focus in on that as a former quarterback, and with us fully committing to the run and shoot this season. I will say that it is true that we have tremendously more completions at practice at this point of fall camp than we did last year. It was worrisome last year at this point. My only thought when observing this and talking with different guys on the sideline, like Chad Owens, our play-by-play guy, John Veneri, a few of us, and just our observation is we can't quite pick out who is going to be our stud wide receiver. And if that's going to be a handful of guys, it might be maybe a couple. But one thing is for sure, they're comfortable as a staff having kind of a deep wide receiver core being interchangeable in this offense. And so that has been interesting for me. In the past, well, let's just go back to the strongest years with the run and shoot. Just recently, we had, the Cedric Birds, the JoJo Wards, the John Ursuas. A little bit before that, the Dylan Collies, Nick Marner was in there, Jason Matthews Shar. So there was a handful of maybe 4, 5, maybe 6. It seems like they're pretty comfortable, especially with some of these tight ends being utilized, kind of working more in the 7, 8 number right now. And then if you throw Tylen Hines in there, maybe 8 or 9. So it's that to me is going to be interesting. And again, I might just be observing at this point of camp the process in and of itself, and maybe that will get kind of tightened up the further that we go. It looks like our slot is I'm blanking on him right now, but going through the roster. Yeah, it looks like Grayson Morgan's going to be big for us at tight end. Yeah, he's he reminds me a little bit of that stud tight end from Georgia, Jordan, and very athletic, can get out there in the field. And they haven't incorporated a couple of the concepts that I'm really looking forward to, like the fade. Whenever we started to bring that in the Rolo era, it just opened so much up. That opened up a ton for us. Yeah, there's a lot of guys that are being kind of used interchangeably right now. So it's difficult to say who is going to be put in what place and to what length, but that I'm most focused on right now.
Yeah, I think some things there.
Wally Nishigaya, my fault. He's our starting slot right now. Yep.
Nishigai, yeah, I'm expecting big things from him. I think just his knowledge, one of the offense, obviously from his time, at St. Louis in high school. But he this was true even, during the Todd Graham era. He just knows how to get open. Like, he understands coverages, he understands nuance, he understands how to find grass, how to just present himself, in the best possible manner. And that's a little bit of a nuanced art. And it really is when it comes to the run and shoot, because of the importance that they put on recognition and route running and getting open. But a few things that you mentioned, we talked a little bit about the receiving core over the course of the offseason, in a group that we thought had some talent in it that was maybe under-recognized, in part because the numbers weren't great from last season. Obviously, you lose a guy like Zion Bowens in addition to that, but the returning production wasn't anything to write home about. But there were guys, they've had an up and down go of it, one due to injury, one due to performance. You think back to that season finale against San Jose State last year. It wasn't their best showing. Quite a few drops in that one, as our guy now from VA likes to mention. But it's a group that's got some playmakers. It's a group that's got some talent. It's a group that brought in, Stephen McBride, the Kansas transfer, who I know has caught the eye of a few people. Curious to get your thoughts on him. But yeah, I'm going to guess that part of it is this point in camp, but I'm also curious to see how it progresses, because I'm with you, right? The usual run and shoot iterations at the University of Hawaii, whether it was the June Jones stretch, whether it was when Rolo was calling the plays as the OC under Coach McMackin, whether when he was the head coach in his second stint back coaching at the University of Hawaii. Like it's usually a core of receivers. Like
yes.
Maybe one of those guys is rotate, or one of those positions is rotating in or out, but it really, I mean, you can think back to it, right? And you listed off some of those names, and I even think back to a guy during the Rolo McMackin time when they won the WAC championship in 2010, and a name that came up often in our comments in Bryant Moniz. But it was Greg Salas, it was Kealoha Pilares. Like those were the guys. They didn't come off the field a ton. Whether it was JoJo Ward or Cedric Bird, Sharsh, those guys in that iteration, you go back, Rivers, Bess, Grice Mullen, like those were the guys. CJ Hawthorne obviously was really good. Ian Sample, a little bit before that, kind of in that same era. But it was all, for the most part, it's not a deep stable of receivers that get a lot of playing time, because so much of it is predicated on rhythm. So much of it is predicated on just reps and getting those right. And the more guys you play, the more variables you throw into the rhythm of the offense. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. I think back to Stutz, and you would know him better than I do in terms of that, Hunter. But, at different points, I know his philosophy was, hey, if you run that deep ball, that go ball, that fade ball, hey, you come out, get fresh legs in there. Somebody else can go and run it at full speed. So there are different philosophies in this. But yeah, when you think about the run and shoot, you don't necessarily think of 8 guys with 50 catches on the year. You think of, that 2019 team where it was 3 guys with 1,000 yards, right? You don't get there by rotating snaps all that often. Like, you have to play the majority of the snaps. So yeah, I'm curious there. And I think that's a really interesting observation by you, Hunter.
Yeah, and to our listeners, especially, hey, our boy Al from VA, I'm going to give you a specific shout out. People very high interest in that guy, Eddie Osei Nikatia, from New Zealand, the sprinter. Mm-hmm. He looks more like a tight end when you're down there.
Big dude.
Big dude. Reminds me of my teammate Ammon Barker, if you remember him.
Yeah.
Just big and thick. The speed holds up. I will say that. The speed definitely holds up. The one thing is he's just brand new to football. And so usually after every rep, they are pulling him to the side and describing, okay, hey, that route, you're supposed to do this. And the run and shoot, Jordan, you could have one route at the line of scrimmage, but then it could be changed 2 or 3 times before they snap the ball, depending on what that DB in front of you is angling, dropping back into coverage. the run and shoot is a difficult thing to run, not just from a quarterback's perspective, but a receiver's one as well, because you have to make a read that you think is appropriate and trust that the QB is making the same read. So it's a very steep learning curve right now for him, but I'm excited for the potential of what we could see with him. But I don't want to spurn our expectations of a guy like him too much, but it's probably going to be a while before we see him starting on the field, unless we just put him in for a go route.
Yeah, and that brings up the other point I think that you made that I found interesting, because what some of the coaches have on the offense side of the football, some of the coaches have talked about, I think some of the players, Brendan Shager included, has been, wanting to stress verticality in the passing game. And this goes all the way back to last season, when they made it known that they were going to start incorporating run and shoot principles into the offense. I think all the way back to, what was it, the New Mexico State game, right? Where we first that was coming off of a bye week or whatever it was. And they were talking about, hey, look, we're going to start doing these things. And part of that was to gain verticality, as they talked about, stretch the field vertically in the passing game. And I think, that can come in a variety of different ways. You mentioned, getting fade involved in it. We talk about some of these guys with speed out there. And so I think that's going to be an important part for this offense. Like, that's clearly been a bullet point for them to get to. Whether you want to go back almost a calendar year, whether you're talking about this offseason, the full installation of this offense. And so, I just was going to kind of ask you to expand on that a little bit when it comes to where the run and shoot is for this group right now, and where it's going, in how they're kind of progressing in that sense. Because the run and shoot is so much ball control. It's quick arrows. It's quick slants. It's getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands really quickly. But then that often opens up the vertical pass game, stretching the field downfield. And so that's going to allow this team to kind of create easier offense, create easier yardage, big chunk plays, points on the board. Because I think at times, and this was a problem last year. At times, this was a problem with the previous offense, I think, as well. Under the Graham era, it just seemed hard at times. Like, yardage seemed hard, unnecessarily hard to come by. And a remedy for that, if you will, I would imagine, is big plays in the passing game, stretching the field down vertically.
Yeah, we've certainly hit some deep balls in the practices that I've been down there for. It looks like we're drilling a lot more middle of the field. I think last week they must have been working some mesh concepts, Jordan, to get down to your second and sometimes even third read. There were, and I was listening for some of the calls, and they're definitely, I would say, somewhat deep into the run and shoot install, which is great sign. I wasn't sure just how far into it they were going to get, but I think they're trying to incorporate that. We just haven't done a great job thus far, from what I've seen, winning some of those one-on-one matchups. So to me, that's a point of focus that they're going to need to kind of double down on. And with that, I would love for, these practices for QBs like Shager and Joey Yellen, who's our number 2 right now, and then Jake Farrell, be okay getting that check down. If it's not there, like, get it to your receiver's hands as quick as possible. You go back and watch film of those guys. Sometimes if that first read wasn't there, they're immediately backside to that zone, and Colt would get it out of his hands before his third step would even hit the ground. So that is kind of the secret of the run and shoot, is utilizing that space and allowing our guys to really make the defense pay in yards after catch. So I think that could be utilized a little bit more during practice for us.
Yeah, it's a process, and I think when we've heard from Coach Chang and whatnot, like it's such a commitment, right? And it's reps. Like that's the biggest thing with the run and shoot is just getting reps in there in practice and balls in the air, and it takes time. It really does, and you're bringing in some new faces as well, right? Whether it's transfers or guys that are completely new to the game of football, like Eddie Osei. It's going to be an offense that wants to have a huge high completion percentage, and as I think you point out, Hunter, getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands, that'll open things up. Yards after the catch will be massive. It always has been when this offense has shown its peak effectiveness. And I think it'll be a little while. I think it'll take a little while to get there, especially in game reps early in the season. I think as long as we see some of those flashes, you see some of that improvement there. I think we'll see an improvement off of last season, which is the main thing in the progression of things going forward. You mentioned, some of those one-on-one battles. Could that also be just a really positive outlook on the defensive side of the football, Hunter? Like, should we get really excited about the defensive backs because they're dominating some of these sessions, or I'm going to guess it's a little bit of both, but I do think that defensive backfield can be something that fans can get excited about.
Certainly. I talked about this with Josh. I've always observed in all the time I've been around football, and just practices have a higher energy level when the defense is playing better than the offense. It's just the way it goes. Anytime there's an interception, a fumble, a turnover, a stop, man, the defense celebrates like it's the second coming of Christ. It's incredible. Now, some would argue, why doesn't the offense do that? Well, the offense's job is to score points. It's to hit big plays. It's to get on the board. And so there's almost this inherent acting like you've been there before on the offensive side of the football, where we don't celebrate as much as the defense. With all that being said, the defense has been celebrating a lot, Jordan, from what I've observed at practice. And sure, that not taking anything away from the talent over there. I mean, we've got a returning first team All Mountain West DB in Cam Stone. That's something of sort of a rarity for University of Hawaii to claim that going into another season. Normally guys who get an award like that is usually like when Jelani Tavai did that as his senior season. So that's rare for us to have a guy like that. Obviously Peter Monuma had a huge year for us last year. Logan Taylor played incredibly well for us. Mekhi Pei has been doing really well from my observation. Couple other DBs that they've kind of peppered in there. They've even rumored that we might even be trying to do some man-to-man coverage for the first time. So in order to do that, you got to be extremely athletic and capable to run with your guys. And at least being able to run with our guys on offense, they're able to do so right now.
Yeah, that's encouraging. I think from the defensive side of the football, and I know they had a good day on Saturday, going up against the offense, and oftentimes, the offense is going to take a little bit longer to get sort of gelled and find the cohesion at this point in camp. But there are a lot of guys to get excited about, Cam Stone included. Massive transfer. I mean, one of the biggest defensive gets I think this program has seen in a little while now. We will have a lot more throughout the month of August in terms of observations and how this team is looking going forward, getting ready for Vanderbilt. So we'll take a little quick halftime break here. And when we get back, we'll talk a little bit of conference realignment again, because the Mountain West, as it stands, still intact. But the other conference west of the Rockies in shambles right now. We'll be back with more right here on Hawaii Football Now.
This is Hawaii Football Now from ESPN Honolulu.
Second halftime here on Hawaii Football Now, episode 101. Jordan, Hunter, and Jonathan back with you. All right, Hunter, wanted to spend a little bit of time on this because who knows where the news could go over the next few weeks. It's rumored that Pac-12 has some media news to announce shortly. We've been hearing that for like a year now. So believe what you will. But the big news last week is Colorado, formerly of the Big 12, now going back to the Big 12 after this upcoming school year. So they'll be in the Pac-12 this year. You know, it was about a decade or so stay in the Pac-12 and what they thought at the time was a great move. I think it made a lot of sense for them when they in Utah jumped over to the Pac-12 with the Pac-10 at the time to create the Pac-12. But right now the Pac-10 is kind of crumbling. Who knows what's going forward? The San Diego State edition kind of fell through, right? We covered that at length here on the podcast. They're going to be in the Mountain West seemingly for the next 2 years. USC and UCLA last summer, you'll remember, made the announcement they're bolting for the Big Ten, which left the Pac-12 back at 10 teams. Now they'll be at 9 with Colorado, who hasn't been good, who's honestly been the worst football program in the Pac-12 since they've joined. If you look at the numbers, nobody's been as bad as them. And it's a huge region. They went on and got Deion Sanders. So they're going back to the Big 12. The Big 12 has made it no secret they are courting teams and have courted teams from other conferences, including more from the Pac-12. You're thinking, the four corner schools, right? You hear it all the time: Utah, Colorado, and the Arizona schools, Arizona and Arizona State. And the Big 12, with the addition of Colorado, plus the four new incomers that joined this season in BYU, Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati will take them back up to 12. Colorado will get them to 13. I'd imagine they'd like to get to an even number. What school that is? Could it be one of the Pac-12 four corner schools? You've heard UConn. You've heard all kinds of different rumors. Could it be a Mountain West school? I'd imagine they'll get a Pac-12 school before a Mountain West school like Colorado State or San Diego State to join. But there are some seismic shifts going on. Once again, it's kind of interesting because, the worst football program in the Pac-12 has really created some huge alarm bells around it. And right now, the one stable conference in this half of the country is the Mountain West. And I'm curious to see how far the Pac-12 disintegrates, or are they able to rebuild it back up? But what'd you make of the news there last week, Hunter?
Yeah, Colorado has always just been an afterthought for me, Jordan, especially in the Pac-12, I'm sure. And I think Oregon's coach even said something like that yesterday along the lines of, they've never been all that good, so it is what it is, kind of a thing. It almost seems like Pac-12 is like, all right, here you go. And the Big 12 was just happy to scoop them up because, hey, they used to be in they used to be in the Big 12. So it's kind of a returning to a conference that they have some history in. I can't help but wonder if this is the first of maybe a few more to jump over from the Pac-12. The Pac-12, since conference realignment has kind of been a thing these last couple of years, has kind of just been twiddling their thumbs, haven't really gone out there and gotten any crazy media deals done or accomplished. And in hindsight, when the Big 12 lost Texas and Oklahoma, instead of keeling over and dying, they went out shopping and said, who could we grab to enforce our brand, continue the greatness of where our conference is heading, and kind of shore up some assuredness that we're going to be okay. And they've done a great job, Jordan. I got to tip my cap to that conference because they're emerging as kind of the third member of the Big Three that's kind of forming right now between the SEC, Big Ten, and now the Big 12. The ACC is rumored to be losing members. The Pac-12 is losing members. It's looking like they could be, with this news, they are only going to be a 9-team conference unless more realignment happens. Either they look to poach from opposing Division I conferences like, I don't know, the Mountain West, or or something. But man, with everything shaking out the way it is, it's apparent the Pac-12 is in trouble. And the Pac-12 is in big trouble. It is far and away from where the Pac-12 used to be. The glory days of Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart at USC in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. You and I growing up on that, gone are those days. I've shared this at length that I really only feel like, even from Hawaii's perspective, there's only 3 teams in the Pac-12 that I don't feel like we can hang with, and that's Washington, Oregon, and Utah. Everybody else, any given Saturday, we can beat those guys. So the allure of Pac-12, of them being this high and mighty Power 5 neighbor to us, is just gone, Jordan. It really is. So it is. It's going to be a new frontier when you think of college football.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're excluding soon to be departed USC and UCLA from that as well.
Yeah,
just want to clarify that for the folks.
Right.
It's funny because I agree with you on Utah, Washington, and Oregon as well. But there was a time when UH and Utah were in the same conference and very much on even footing in a lot of ways, in a lot of sports as well. It's funny you say that, because I think the other point I wanted to get to was this really could go one of 2 ways for the Pac-12. You would think, right? So often it's like, hey, look, we'll expand, we'll add teams, we'll regroup, which is exactly as you laid out what the Big 12 did, and we thought that's what the Pac-12 was going to do with the likes of San Diego State and elsewhere, right? We thought at least they'd go get San Diego State. Potentially another school out there. And that fell through in large part because it's just been a nightmare of a time for this conference to get out of the gutter when it comes to the media deals. The Big 12 has that financial stability. They've got a good TV deal, and that's a huge reason Colorado is jumping here. And so the Pac-12 could go, I think, the assumed route, and they could try to lure. They could try to figure out a way to get San Diego State back in. They could figure out a way to try and go after some other schools, right? At this point, it appears that them doing going the route of poaching Colorado away from the Big 12 like they did over a decade ago, like their only options are Mountain West schools at this point, I would imagine, for the Pac-12. Go down the list of whoever you want when it comes to the 12 schools that exist in the Mountain West. Gonzaga has been thrown out as well as like a basketball only addition or a non-football addition to the conference for the Pac-12. Now you're getting a little creative. You're trying to figure things out, very non-Pac-12 stability type of deal. But the other way, and I think, honestly, this might be just as likely, is the conference kind of ceasing to exist. Which would be really sad, as you point out, as guys who grew up, especially during that era of Pac-10 football and really all the other sports. And look, my dad's an Oregon grad, loves Oregon, watches all their games, in tune, is big on their recruiting and everything. And so
Stanford.
Yeah, it's if Arizona State, Utah, maybe bolt for the Big 12, right? That seems very possible. I'm not saying it's imminent, but it's at least a decent percentage of happening. If Oregon and Washington get swooped up by the Big 10, no secret, they've made phone calls. The Big 10 now, without Kevin Warren, they're under new leadership there right after Kevin Warren left to go take the front office position with the Chicago Bears, seem to be less hell-bent on like westward expansion. I think USC and USC in particular does not want other West Coast schools to join the Big 10, but it could possibly happen, right? Oregon and Washington, they're joining the Big 10. And now all of a sudden you're not left with a lot of teams. You're talking about the schools that, I think you feel like we could hang with. Washington State, Oregon State, Cal, Stanford. That's kind of what you're going to be left with for this conference. I'd imagine Cal and Stanford would also be pretty attractive to the Big 10 Bay Area academic prestige. The Big Ten still likes to kind of ride that high horse when it comes down to it. And so, are we looking at maybe the Mountain West now all of a sudden being in a great position where it's like, look, we're still here. We're still in a pretty good spot, even if maybe they lose a school or two to the Big 12 or whatever. Or somebody gets poached off by, say, Conference USA or the American or something like that, right? Maybe the Colorado schools or the Utah schools. Are we looking at the Mountain West somehow absorbing like Oregon State, Washington State, and all of a sudden those being Mountain West schools? I don't know. Like it doesn't take a whole lot of mental gymnastics to get there. And maybe I'm kind of talking out of my okole here, but it really does seem like these are very precarious times for the Pac-12. Or you could talk yourself into, if you really wanted, it's like, hey, look, get Gonzaga in the Pac-12 and Hawaii can be its partner as the the football playing 10th member. Gonzaga can be in every other sport, and and all of a sudden we're Power 5 and everybody's pipe dream has come true. I think that's far less likely. But then it's kind of crazy. One of the more stable conferences in the country right now, outside of like the SEC and the Big Ten, is the Mountain West when it comes to football.
Yeah, at this point, Jordan, with the state of the Pac-12, not only do I think that's not all that crazy that Pac-12 could actually come knocking at our door, but then vice versa, we're almost in a position to be like, do we want to do that?
Yeah, it's a weird time where you'd be like, I don't know, the Pac-12, maybe not.
Wild. It really is. It's a different era that we're kind of stepping into. And it's a bummer, man. Really, it is. I hate when longtime rivalries go away. It's just it's unfortunate. And the other thing here that I'm really curious about has been the kind of observed quietness from Oregon and Washington, where they've kind of ruled the Pac-12 recently, and they're not really speaking on this a whole lot. And I feel like they have a lot more gravitas in negotiating power to go to another conference than a Colorado. But I mean, Colorado, you have the geography similarity to the Big 12, so I understand that. But Oregon and Washington have to be fielding calls about conference realignment all the time. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They'd be stupid not to be trying to position themselves, right? Like they've got to get out ahead of it. And that could be to me the saving grace for the conference is if Oregon and Washington decide, hey, look, whether it's decided for them that they don't really have a surefire home to go land in, like the Big Ten or something like that, and they basically start running things or start positioning things kind of themselves and being like, look, hey, we're going to salvage this thing and here's how we're going to do it, because those two right now to me have kind of the say.
Yeah, I don't know where we're going to end up, but it seems like it's a battlefield out there right now, and thank God we're out here on an island.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big moat to get through to get to Hawaii. All right, that'll kind of do it for us. Again, thanks everybody for all of your comments and shout outs via social media and whatnot. We really appreciate it. It's been our pleasure. We're back next week with episode 102. But before we get out of here, quick little 2-minute drill overtime. Hunter, I don't know if you had anything, but I did kind of want to tee you up on Tiger joining the PGA board of directors. I like this for golf going forward. So I don't know if you wanted to do a couple of minutes on that.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for that as well. The PGA has been in drastic need for new leadership, courageous leadership, with all of the what some people are calling backstabbing going on from Jay Monahan to some of the top players in the whole live PGA controversy. And it's good that Tiger, with his the weight that he carries and the presence that he carries is caring about potentially the future of the game there. He didn't have to do that. The dude could literally hang out on his multi-million-dollar estate down at Jupiter Island as long as he probably wanted to. But it shows in some ways that he cares and wants to get his hands dirty, Jordan.
Could be good. Could be good for the game. I think it will be going forward for this group. All right, that'll do it for us. Always a pleasure to join you guys weekly, and we will be back next week on Hawaii Football Now. Big thanks to Spectrum Mobile and HawaiiUSA Federal Credit Union as well. Big shouts to you, Hunter, and our guy Jonathan, putting this thing together and getting it ready for publication in a couple of days. We will see everybody back next week. Counting down, man. We're getting close, already in August. Game month with Vanderbilt looming just a few weeks from now. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Aloha.
You've been listening to Hawaii Football Now with Jordan Helly and Hunter Hughes, all from ESPN Honolulu.